Imagine taking over a family business that just happens to be one of the world's most iconic music venues, where some of the biggest names from Neil Young to Guns N' Roses and even Incubus have played. That's just part of Nic Adler's story. Nic had the quintessential Hollywood upbringing where his dad, Lou Adler, founded the Roxy in 1973, which happens to be the same year that Nic was born. And in 1998, with the wisdom he acquired from his father on how to manage a business, a club, and even artists, Nic took over the Roxy and has since gone on to become a successful restaurateur and music festival producer. So join us as we talk to Nic about the Roxy's 50th anniversary and the special place that West Hollywood holds in his heart. So, Nic, where to begin, by the way? I mean, like, seriously, from your upbringing to what you've also accomplished in your career, live music venue owner, restaurateur, festival founder, social media guru. There's a bit of that in your history there. You've really done it all, or like a lot of things. So why don't we just kind of like start back at the beginning? Tell us a little bit about your background and then how you came to be co-owner of the Roxy.
I was born. No.
Lucky you.
Totally lucky me.
Such a smart business plan.
Thank you.
Yes.
I will try to replicate that.
I worked on it for like 9 months. It was no. I am very lucky and blessed. Obviously, I didn't pick my parents; they picked me, and was born into a really amazing family that has continued to grow over my life. I have kids. I have younger brothers. I have 7 brothers.
Oh wow!
And all younger than me, and so I kind of started it all for my dad. But as far as my kind of connection with West Hollywood and my kind of business side of things, really began at the Roxy, because the Roxy opened in 1973. I was born in 73. So we've basically grown up together.
Yeah,
And,
I love
sometimes
that.
I actually feel like the Roxy is one of my brothers. We fight. We love each other. We've given each other a lot.
You're in it for the long haul.
Totally. And, I think also my younger brothers are kind of going through this similar thing. It's almost like a rite of passage, or an opportunity within our family to learn about music, production, marketing, understanding people. There's 500 people that come through the doors every night. You learn a lot about how people enjoy themselves, the good and the bad of it. And so my many years at the Roxy gave me so many opportunities, and they also, one of them stems in production. One is that marketing side. Also, my family's part of the Rainbow, and so it was getting dropped off at the Roxy at 3:00 after school and running between the Rainbow and the Roxy, and whatever one was more interesting at the time. Jumping in the kitchen, learning how to make pizza, being around all those cooks all the time. Running back for sound check at the Roxy, and seeing these bands come in and the different instruments and the different music. And then the sun goes down and you see a lot of other things.
Was this starting when you were like junior high? Like
no,
8 years old?
Earlier? Younger?
Yes, 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
I mean, this.
Wow.
I was my next brother. He's 5 or 6 years younger than me. So it was really my dad and I for the first 6 or 7 years in terms of like just being out. And then obviously at 6 and 7, I was already kind of used to just being with my dad.
Yeah, you were in the circuit. You were in the mix.
I was in the mix. Yeah, a lot of weird like back rooms with like a rubber toy, because there was no phones or iPads or nothing. And then I'd fall asleep, and I'd probably have hundreds of memories of my dad carrying me and putting me in the car.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of that, but a lot of music studios.
Yeah.
My dad was doing some movies around that time, so editing bays. A lot of Laker history.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So my dad and Jack are obviously known to go to the basketball games, and they got those court seats in 1980. I was 7 at that point. So I would go to a lot of games. We would meet at the Roxy.
Oh, fun.
So there was the Roxy for me was really this central meeting point of whether it was after school or we were going somewhere or we were ending the night. We would somehow end up between the Rainbow and the Roxy. Which
is so fun. I mean, like what a cool experience. I mean, obviously like that's how you were raised. So it's like you didn't know any different.
Totally.
Just
I have that, I didn't, it wasn't until maybe I was 30 in mid 20s that I was able to kind of say, okay, this isn't normal.
Yeah.
But I always equate it to the family business. And so you might be in the middle of the country and you might be in a small town and your parents own the hardware store.
Yeah.
And people are coming in and they need something and you build relationships with people. You grow up there, your friends meet you there, whatever. And then at some point your dad, calls you upstairs and says, okay, here's the keys to the register. Go to work. And I'm like, well, wasn't my plan today. And he's like, it's your plan now. So there was a little bit of that, right? This kind of just family business.
Totally.
It just happened to be on the Sunset Strip at the Roxy and, Guns N' Roses is playing. So, but it was, I think while it's a very uncommon story, I think the story of a family business is relatable to a lot of people.
Totally. So do you remember when that moment was?
I do.
That you kind of really realized the cultural significance or impact that like the Roxy had, and you're like, oh, this is pretty neat that we're tied to this.
That really came, so running a business is not easy.
Of course, never is.
Running a music venue, in the changing times, in terms of media where we are today, the Roxy was, it was a lot of fun. And I think if I just said I ran the Roxy for many years, people would be like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
But just like running any business, that's like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, of course.
And, payroll and rent and bills and, someone from the sheriff's department calling me at 2 a.m. or whatever it is. Like, there was all of those things too. And, I think when we were in our hardest times, and again, that was mostly because new venues were opening. There was a shift, a kind of a cultural shift in LA from West Side to East Side. There was many factors in it, and I was worried that the pressure again of the family business, maybe going down on my watch.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, okay, I'm thinking about the family significance of that moment, but really came into the cultural understanding of the Roxy and the legacy and what it meant. Not that I needed any more pressure at that time.
Of course not.
But I stopped a little bit during that time and really understood that I wasn't just, at the helm of a family business, but really something that was known worldwide and had a lot of cultural significance.
And what point was this? Like what?
This was right around when the Sunset Strip Music Festival, we started to put that together.
Okay, so like 2008-ish.
Yeah, because there was all cities go through transitions, and Sunset. Sunset will always go through transitions. I tell this to people all the time. They're like, oh, the Strip's not cool anymore. And I'm like, wait 3 years. And I think anything that's great needs to kind of shed its skin and go through those transformational moments.
And evolve.
And right before the Sunset Strip Music Festival, we were having one of those moments on the Strip. The clubs weren't communicating with each other. We were, fierce, I'll just say enemies. We felt that way. You didn't talk to the Viper Room, or you didn't talk to the Key Club, or whatever that might be, the Viper Room. And it was, we were going in the wrong direction as an entertainment community by really fighting each other. And then, West Hollywood really stepped up in that moment, created a bid, realized that Sunset, the Strip, needed more. Todd kind of took control of that, came and met me one day. I also, at the same time, was really understanding where social media was.
Yeah.
And the Roxy had just started really pushing on social media. And there was this idea of collaboration and reaching out to people, and kind of all happened at the same time.
Yeah.
And then one day I DM'd the marketing person at the Viper Room.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like, I know now the story, they let it sit for like 24 hours and was like, oh, wow, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to answer that. And then answered. We ended up having lunch, and Nate's one of my closest friends still today. I love him, and he was the marketing director. And the next one was to the Comedy Store. We kind of both went in and did a group DM to the Comedy Store, and then it was a hotel, and then it was another club, and before we knew it, we were all hanging out together. And
everything's fine, moving along.
And we started to come together as a community, and it was more like, hey, go to the Viper Room at the 8:00 show and hit the Roxy at the 10:00 show, and then go over by the hotel. We're having a get together.
Yeah.
We were doing things called tweet crawls, where we were going up and down the Strip,
I remember those days.
Really was a time that the Roxy needed that, the Strip needed it. And really was a big shift for it. And that communication and that relationships went and made Sunset Strip Music Festival viable.
Yeah.
Because we all understood that if there was something we could all work towards together
and come together on,
it'd be better for everyone.
100%. So wait, I love this, and I want to actually talk more about that, but to kind of like bring, others up to speed that might be tuning in, let's like talk about just like the history of the Roxy, because I know we kind of like fast forwarded a bit, but like the music history, like obviously, you mentioned coming up on the 50th anniversary, sharing that same year as when you were born. But what's the story behind it? Like why was it created? And then can you explain a little bit about that, and then maybe even its relationship to some of the other venues, as you mentioned, your family kind of having those tied together?
The early 70s, my dad had really tremendous success as a music producer, coming out of the 60s with the Mamas and Papas, and then had a run with produced a bunch of Carole King albums and was managing her career. I think there was some shows at the Troubadour. I think back then the way they did it was you were signed to a club, so you really played that club multiple times, and you didn't play anywhere else. And
as a musical artist,
and I there was something at the Troubadour where Carole was playing, and he didn't like the deal, or he didn't like something, and just felt like there was and this is nothing. The Troubadour is
for sure
has paved the way for
almost
all the clubs in the world. So nothing against them, but created a moment where my dad felt like there could be more, a different kind of club, and just an opportunity. And so himself and, there's Geffen was in the mix, and Bill Graham was in the mix, and Elliot Roberts, who was Neil Young's manager, and others. They kind of all got together, and of course Elmer Valentine, who did the whiskey with my dad and Mario. They all got together, and Chuck Landis had the Roxy. It was a strip club prior to that. And they got with Chuck Landis, and they said, what's the possibility of turning this venue into, a music venue? And, it took a little bit of time. And at a similar time, I had mentioned that I was born and my dad was in London. And my mom was like, you got to see this play, this Rocky Horror Show. You're just going to love it. It's got to come to L.A., and so on my mom's advice, my dad ended up going to see Rocky Horror,
Yeah.
meeting Richard O'Brien, and then the first, I think, about 8 months of the Roxy Horror Show played there.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
With Tim Curry and the majority of the cast that was actually in the movie.
Wow, what a way to start!
Yeah,
talk about a splash.
Yeah, and so that was at the club, and then transitioned, and Neil Young opening night.
Very cool.
Which we'll be seeing Neil 50 years later on that same night at the Roxy. So that's pretty tremendous.
That's so cool.
But I think it was, my dad was very artist focused.
Yeah.
Really, as well as the fan. But I almost feel like he was a producer. He was a manager. He really cared about the artist experience.
Yeah.
And so when he put the Roxy together, and obviously I'd mentioned those other people were involved, those were all very people that were focused on the artist.
Yeah.
And they knew if the artist was happy, the fan was going to be happy. So created a very, you go into the Roxy and you're like, oh, this is the Roxy. It's not that it's not impressive, but it really is, it's about the stage.
Yeah.
And it's about who's on that stage. And it's a platform for so many artists. And so, he opened that. Amazing artists played there, from the Motown artists to Bob Marley, The Clash, and then obviously once the club started getting rolling, you look back now, you're able to look back and you go, oh, okay, here's the start. Here's where there was a punk rock phase here, and then. Okay, this is when glam started, and Guns N' Roses and Poison, and LA Guns, and all of those bands. You start seeing them come in, and then then it was more a little bit of my time where it was the Incubus and Korn and Rage Against the Machine and those bands, and then you kind of have the Maroon 5 and these different artists. So you could just look back through time and really see
like the arc of the history.
Whatever
of
was
musical
really,
history.
The Roxy, there was no social media. So
let's talk about that.
In today's world, a lot of these artists, their first play is in a room that holds 3,000 to 5,000 people. And this is the first show that they've ever done. That's not how it was. I mean, you played the Coconut Teaser, and then you played the Viper Room, and then you played the Whiskey, and then you played the Roxy, and you kind of went on this kind of ladder to the next club up. It's very different today, but I think what it did for a lot of those artists was, I look at Incubus; those are good friends of mine, and they played the club a lot, and they got out there and they gave tickets to people and fire, and they were like hand to hand. Yeah. But they can go out and they can play in front of 30,000 people in any city across the world still today. And I think that came from just the base of having a relationship, a direct relationship with your fan base, whether that's handing someone a flyer, whether that's being 5 feet away from them at a venue kind of like the Roxy or the Whiskey. Just a different time. I think that today in social media, there's nothing wrong with it, but you can just get to so many more people so much faster, which maybe makes the rise faster, but it could also make the other side faster too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's always this notion of this shorter attention span and short shelf life as well too. I know. So you kind of came on board 1998, something like that. Yeah. So at that point, kind of what you were saying. I mean, did you even have a vision at that point, or was it just more of like, I just need to like run the family business, and then it was like later? Then you're like, okay, there's the cultural significance. We need to kind of join forces with the rest of the Sunset Strip to really like this is bigger than us.
Yeah. I think besides whatever I thought, it wasn't really up to me, because I walked in that first day and I told everybody I was their boss, and they said, okay, Nick, You're
like, okay, Nick.
Sure. We go grab us some iced tea down the street.
You're like, okay.
So, as much as I had a sticker on my desk that said,
the plaque.
I'm the boss.
the plaque.
Was your dad still coming in regularly and in the mix at that point, or was was it all on you?
But quickly,
like you got it. Kid.
Yeah, definitely was pretty fast. And Malibu is it seems much further now, but even back then, that's a good drive. And
it's a drive.
And my dad had put a lot of work in to get it to where it was. So there was other people running it, but anytime anyone else runs your business and it's not like you or a family member, things go whatever direction they want to go in.
Yeah.
And so there was a little cleanup, and for me, earned respect from my coworkers that took a few years.
Of course.
So it wasn't. I don't think I could really have a vision
at that point.
And I don't even know if I was managing bands at the same time too. So I was, which was really good because I understood the other side of it, right? So
Smart.
you don't know until you know what it's like when the band pulls up in the van and they knock on the door, and we were just rolling, man, and they're like, "Where's the bathroom?"
yeah, totally.
And we're just like, it's over there, and so you learn that bands have just driven 12 hours and they just ate some crappy food at 2 a.m. and they're not happy, and maybe one of them's hungover and the rest of them are fighting. And so it was interesting to understand the dynamic of the other side. And I think
totally,
like my dad originally started the Roxy with this intention of artists first and understanding the artist. I came into it in a similar way with managing bands and being on the road with a band and knocking on that loading door at noon and having someone come out and not really care about you or converse with you or just roll the door up and point. So I was able to pick up on that, and then just get a sense of there again. It was a changing time, and so as I was figuring it out, things could have been different, 3 months later. And that's why I always say, Sunset is ever evolving, and there's people that are like, oh, they're just putting in hotels up there. And I'm like, that's cool. So people can actually stay there
and walk to the venues.
So it's just, I love Slash, but there's a documentary called The Sunset Strip, and, and part of it, and not just Slash, but others, the kind of common theme was, well, it's not how it was, it's not how it was back in the day. And I'm like, well, it is for the 18-year-old that's in the front row of the Roxy tonight. Like it's right there for that person.
So you also had this moment with like social media as far as, and like, can you talk about that as far as how, like really being like one of the first music venues to really kind of like dominate the social media space. I mean, that's kind of significant.
It was cool. I was sitting down and tofu pad thai or something, and the bartender, what are you eating? And I was like, some tofu pad thai. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm the owner. And she's like, oh. She's like, how come? She said, how come you don't know me? And we both looking at each other like neither of us knew each other, and I was like, okay, and ended up becoming my wife many years later. But as we started dating, she was on MySpace, and I was bringing it back. I was the opposite of any of that. I was like, no, we gotta be
social media.
It wasn't even called social media. It was
at that point,
well, whatever. And she's like, why isn't the club on social media or on MySpace? And I'm like, I don't know, And she's like, well, you should be on there. And I was like, oh. She's like, well, what if I do it? And I was like, okay, you can do it. And then like a week later, she like shows me, she's like, look at this. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, someone messaged? And she's like, yeah, someone messaged. And I'm like, well, that's cool. And then I was like, well, another person messaged. And I was like, whoa, I was like communicating with the people that go to the Roxy or the people that care about the Roxy. And it just was this like moment of wow, that wall that is just up there when you're marketing, and you could drop a flyer, or you could do something but you don't know how that reacts. You don't know if that person's going to come to the show, or they like that kind of music, or they don't, or what. Like, there was no Yelp, there was no feedback other than, as someone's getting kicked out, don't come back here, and I'm never coming, this place sucks. That was really the only feedback we would get.
Yeah, of course.
So there was just a moment in that MySpace time where, there was the followers were clicking all these like things that were like, endorphins or whatever was happening in my brain. I was like, whoa, this is cool. Like,
and you realize you're connecting with all the people directly.
So she ran that for a while, and then I think it was Facebook came, and a couple other things. I don't, but we started to kind of go in pretty big on them, and I really spent time and tried to understand them. And then Twitter and Instagram came online, Facebook, and we just understood it. And we also, unlike a lot of other people that were on those platforms, we had content every day.
Yeah.
Right? Whether that was
Fresh
just
content,
something basic as a flyer, right? It was static, but you posted it, and it was like, oh, I remember the last time I went to see that band, da 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 da, and then someone else posted a picture, and there was a community that was kind of happening, and then eventually, it was the ability to take a camera in your phone. So it was like, go downstairs and take a picture of the guitar case of the Foo Fighters or whatever.
Whoever's playing. Yeah.
And then, it's like, oh my God, and it was like, maybe take a picture of the dressing room setup. And it was like, oh, where's the green M&Ms? There was just like, you're just like opening this door to a place that no one's ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, it brought it into today's world, and being one of the first music, why it's so significant is you guys were really one of the first big music venues.
Oh, we were
in the world to be doing this.
We were.
So that's the part that you're being very humble about.
Yeah. I mean, the Roxy lived at the top of that kind of chart.
Yeah.
Wherever that is, for a long time.
Yeah. No. So okay, let's talk about the 50th anniversary that's coming up. So can you give us a little taste? Like, what can we expect for this celebration? I know you just...
I think as much as we are 50 years forward, I think we're trying to go 50 years back.
Love that.
And give people a taste of what it was like in those early days of the Roxy and the most monumental shows. Can't spill the beans, but...
Okay.
But
tease at least.
I would say that if we go back and we look at the most iconic shows over the Roxy's history, we're really trying to bring those back, and maybe it's a member, maybe it's the entire band.
So a lot of surprises.
There's a lot of surprises,
and we don't want to miss.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is all throughout the month?
It's through the kind of last quarter of the year, but a lot going on in September.
Okay. I think I know what we're going to have to be doing. I know what I'm clearing my schedule.
Well, I also know what I'm doing too.
You know more than us. Okay. So this is, wow, like so much history. I'm so excited to see it like come to life in this whole celebration as far as everything that you've got going on. For those that maybe haven't been here, or they haven't been to the Sunset Strip, how do you describe this? Like, what is this energy? What is this creativity? Like, how do you explain that to somebody that maybe hasn't been here before and experienced it firsthand?
Yeah, well, I think you go back partly to how the strip was created, right? It was this unincorporated strip of land between Beverly Hills and Hollywood. No one really cared what happened. There was speakeasies and strip clubs.
It was like the Wild West.
Yeah, it was totally like in a pretty kind of advanced city at that point. You had this 1.5 miles of debauchery.
Yeah, in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle.
Right.
So I think that kind of lawlessness, freedom, be who you are, ethos really was born out of that time on the strip and seeped down into the what has become West Hollywood and the dynamic that's been created over time of this, because especially in terms of bringing people the majority of the hotels, a ton of nightlife, a ton of restaurants, shopping, all of those experiences live up on the Strip.
Totally.
And really allow that person to come from wherever and kind of relive, I don't know, what I've been through, or a Jim Morrison, or a Bob Marley, or a Axl Rose, or a Adam Levine, or whoever it might be. We all walk those streets.
It's tangible history.
Yeah, it's all there, and it's not gone.
No,
like
not at all.
I had mentioned, the greatest night of your life.
Yeah.
Could be tonight, on the Strip.
I love this. So we're gonna do a thing called playing favorites.
Okay.
Because we all have them.
Okay.
And you can definitely obviously you're gonna have your own. But how would you describe your ideal night out in West Hollywood? Where would you go? Where would you eat? Where would you stay? And you can have favorites that are like closely tied to you. That's okay.
Growing up here and working here and spending the time that I have, I will go back in time a little bit because now I need to be home for dinner. And
be reasonable.
That night isn't going to happen. I understand that. But, for me, night market is just one of the best restaurants we have in LA.
Love that, by the way. That's Thai food for those that don't know.
Still amazing.
Yeah.
Still amazing. Yeah. Known for street Thai food.
Yeah, street Thai food and
so
incredible
good.
natural wine program.
Yeah.
And then I would probably pop into the Roxy. And, I'm not someone who probably watches the whole show, but get a little bit of that.
A little bit of the taste, the
vibe.
vibe.
Head over to the Rainbow for a minute.
Nice.
Give some high fives, say hello. Would probably head down to the Viper at that point. Grab a couple more minutes, say hello. The most interesting people to me are the people that work the door, and the bartenders.
See it all.
Yeah, they see it all, and they're friends, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like this is my treehouse. This is like my neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Like so, Rock and Riley's, maybe hit that up a little bit. High five the whiskey door guys, and then end up on the Rocks.
I love that.
And hopefully make it home at some point.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts, tips? Did you have any other questions?
I have. I could talk to you all day long.
Yeah, we could definitely.
I feel like I still have a million questions, but there is a time limit, so we'll probably have to have you come back. But so I've been doing marketing for Visit West Hollywood for the last 5 years, and so I just wanted to say thank you to you and your family for what you've meant. I mean, we go around the world and we talk about what's happening on the Sunset Strip. People know it. You said there'd probably be no West Hollywood without the Sunset Strip and vice versa.
So true.
Yeah. It's an ecosystem that is, not important for people here, but people around the world who want to come here. And, obviously the Roxy is something that is world renowned and people want to come here and experience it. So, just thank you for for caring about that and for being that kid who grew up at 8 and not screwing it up and just really thank
you for not screwing it up.
Really
I'm still working on it.
It's really impressive and it's really important. And I also love what you say. This is more me rambling than a question. I guess.
We love this.
That, you talk about how the Strip is changing and people, lament, oh, there's too many, it's getting too built up, the hotels. But I really think it continues to capture the legacy of what West Hollywood stands for, which is that you can have this really elevated experience if you go to the Pendry and have dinner with Wolfgang Puck on the rooftop up there. But then you go and you're going to listen to some rock and roll band down at the Roxy and have that kind of evening. It's that mix of things that what makes West Hollywood really cool.
I would just jump in on that and say, there are other places like that in the world, and Vegas being one of them.
Yeah.
But and this is no dig at Vegas, but that's a manufactured experience. Yeah. Where I think what you're talking about and what's happening on the Strip is really a layered over time. It's almost like these layers of rock that are just kind of. And there is no taking it away. The good and the bad, like those are there, and everything kind of has a purpose. And if it survived because it was it was needed. We got to go back to that. It was built on, a bar, maybe some gambling, maybe a strip club,
definitely all of the above.
Whatever those were, but it's what worked at that time.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure that person that was sitting in that gambling hall was like, man, these rock clubs are the worst. They're just taking
Right.
over everything, but that's okay. As long as people keep saying that, and they don't ever stop having that conversation. And there's always someone new walking through one of the doors of the countless businesses here, then the Strip will always survive.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
I think that absolutely describes, West Hollywood to a T. So, well, thank you.
Thank you.
This
So
has
great
been
talking to you.
Such
Thanks
a
so
great,
much.
yeah, exactly.